Kelly, we all set? Oh, the first one? That's fine. Why don't we get the meeting started? We can always go back to that.
Turn these things on. Wasn't my opinion.
Okay. Ready to roll? Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mark Palillo, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. I'd like to call this meeting to order on Monday, July 2nd, 2012 at 7 p.m. Let me just go through what our agenda topics are this evening. We're meeting in the auditorium. We anticipated a lot of interest and concern about the recent events as it relates to the Underwood Pool and the removal of the diving board, and we're very much prepared to address it this evening and spend as much time as we need to listen to all resident concerns. So our agenda was to vote and sign the warrant for the September 6, 2012 state primary election, but our town clerk is not here at the moment. If she does come in, we may defer that to later on. We do have, and this was going to be a discussion topic even before the diving board was removed, I had asked Peter Castanino, our Director of Public Works, to update us on the status of the Underwood Pool. It's an ongoing issue. Having served in the warrant committee, clearly understood that there's a need to think about what our future is with this pool. And so he was on the agenda as planned, so fortuitously he's here this evening. But Peter's also going to speak, as well as Stefan Rescalo. Peter's going to first talk about the status, give us an update on his recent memo. Stefan, you're going to speak to the issues as it relates to the diving board, and Dr. David Alper is here as well as Chair of the Board of Health. We also have some other common victualers licenses to discuss, and I'm not certain if they're here this evening. If you are, maybe delayed. And then we're moving into committee appointments. But we're here, the board is committed to listening to all concerns and questions as it relates to the Underwood Pool. But I thought what might make sense is that we would first go through Peter and Stefan's presentation, and once we've done that, and we can answer questions as it relates to both of them. I'm not certain, I know they've been looking at this issue, whether there's any sort of alternative ideas and plan as it relates to the diving board. Perhaps we'll hear that this evening as well. But before I do begin on that, are there any non-diving board questions from town residents? Because that is on the agenda. I certainly want to give anyone an opportunity that's here for other reasons to approach us. Okay. With that, gentlemen, could you please, Calvin, will you join us as well? I don't know whether we have all these microphones.
It's easier for me.
I'll turn it so that you can hear. Peter, thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And I read with interest your memo on the Underwood Pool. I had seen this once before, Peter. I think you presented it to the warrant committee when I was sitting there, and I know you recently updated it. So I know you have some slides. Give us some historical perspective and some of the ongoing issues as it relates to the Underwood Pool. I also want to state, I didn't state this, I understand, and I think the rest of the board understands, this is a community asset. So the last thing we want to do is, if this pool does fail, not have a plan of action to address that. I think this is what this memo is about, because at some point, it's been around since 1912, it's been a patchwork of issues along the way. At some point, it may fail. And I think we do need to have, maybe not a real long-term, but mini long-term plan to address it. So with that, Peter, I'll turn it to you. I don't know whether you need a mic here.
Whatever.
Yeah, okay. I think it's important everyone hears you.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
As you mentioned, Mark, this memo was originally done in July of 2007 with the same effort to update. I actually sent it to the Board of Selectmen back then, as well as all the various committees, Warrant Committee, Capital Budget Committee, all of the various groups in town, Permanent Building Committee, back then as well. I've updated it. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to update in terms of improvements or changes, but I think it's worthy.
You should go through the memo and the timeline, you know, how old.
Yes.
Okay, great, yeah.
Yes, the effort is still the same as you mentioned.
Right.
There is no long-term plan for this facility right now, and that is, as I mentioned, the effort here in this memo. The timeline and the history is in 1911, the land was transferred from Henry Underwood to the town, develop a public playground and a swimming pool. 1912, the town meeting voted to have it called the Underwood Playground. June 17th of 1912, it was a formal pool opening. Pool was designed by Loring Underwood. Pool bottom was cobblestone and sand. Pool banks were also sand with a stone island in the middle with a diving board. There was a natural spring providing 70,000 gallons of water a day. There's a filtering system. Boston newspapers called this the first public outdoor swimming pool in the United States. The bathhouse was designed by H. Thaxter Underwood. This swimming hole, that photo you see is about 1913. In 1932, the pool was rebuilt with a concrete bottom and enclosed by walls. This larger pool now contained 350,000 gallons of water. And we have a photograph of that as well. You can see the edge of the concrete there. Different than it is now, at the beginning of what it is. 1938, the bathhouse was completely rebuilt by the Betts brothers of Belmont. 1957, the stone diving island in the pool was replaced with a concrete diving island. And in 1960, the filter house was, I believe, relocated and rebuilt. Major recent improvements, I was looking at this a little while ago, and I was saying it's like the first 50 years and the last 50. I don't know if 1997 is recent, but recent improvements. The pool was resurfaced. The concrete bottom was resurfaced by Anchor Gunite. There were problems with the installation, problems beginning the year after. They were sued. A portion of the money was recovered. Anchor Gunite went out of business, and the pool bottom has been a continual problem since that and patched just about every year, as many of you know. 1995, we were appropriated $150,000 to make some improvements. There was no public works at that time, but as the highway department then, I was the highway superintendent, we assisted with some work there and did some of it. Basically, they replaced the water distribution system, but not the filter house, the concrete walkway around the pool, and did some site grading, some drainage, patched the pool surface, perimeter wall, added handicapped access to the pool. An alternate planned but not completed was to raise the filtration house above ground and add a new filtration system, but that was not completed as that was estimated at $109,000. There was a study, two studies done in this pool, one in 1988 by Mace Incorporated, which was McKinnell and Taylor, and a 2002 Edwards and Kelsey facilities audit on the bathhouse only. I don't want to repeat myself here, so I will try to just address some of the major issues, but you'll see them repeated by the Mace study and as well as the Edwards and Kelsey facilities audit on the building, and later on by not only the health department's concerns back in 2002, as well as the staff of the maintenance Parks Department. The pool recommendations were address the high groundwater table by instituting several improvements. There were some choices about raising the pool up higher or rebuilding it in a different method with a much thicker bottom. Replace the water circulation piping, which, as I mentioned, was completed in '95. Increase the skimming capacity, that's not have been done. The filtering system, which has not been improved. Segregate the diving area from the wading pool, that was kind of segregated. They recommended a complete segregation. Increase the water depth under the diving board. Replace or reline the pool, as I mentioned a little earlier, and make it handicapped accessible, which we did in 1995. The bathhouse, several issues, cracks in the foundation, add sanitary fixtures and showers, more showers for the number of users, provide hot water for the showers, which was actually done in 1995, or later than that, actually, I think. Increase the size of the water and electric services, provide first aid area, those things still have not been done. Enlarge the structure to the building itself, provide handicap access to the bathhouse functions, those things have not been completed. Edwards and Kelsey did a facilities audit. The bathhouse was one building among many that Edwards and Kelsey looked at. And
within the town, Peter?
Within the town.
Okay.
Yes, within the town. They did several public buildings.
Okay.
The bathhouse was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
They estimated the improvement to mechanical elements in the building itself was $588,000, and the replacement cost was estimated about $473,000. The bathhouse, again, many of the same issues with the bathhouse, without repeating them.
Yeah.
The filter building, mechanical and ventilation for the filter building, as well as electrical receptacles and weatherproof, all electrical weatherproof receptacles, which has not been done. In 2002, the Health Department wrote a memo to the Building Services Department, because at that time, the pool was under their jurisdiction in 2002. Public Works became responsible for the pool in 2003. And many of the Health Department concerns, the bathhouse, the pool, the chemical storage, filter house, all were the same issues that I've already stated.
Peter, if you might, though, on the bottom, because this is something you always explain to me, I mean, in terms of where it currently sits. This is bottom in disrepair, loses water, poor location. Can you
Right.
just explain what that?
Sure. I think
you don't mind.
the pool was originally a swimming hole fed by a spring.
Yeah.
It's right next to the brook. The walkway, the concrete walkway that is right next to the pool, right adjacent to the pool on the Concord Ave side, it looks like a
The one
cement,
that's sort of, you would first get to as you walk down.
between that low area.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That looks like a walkway, but that's actually the top of the culvert of the brook.
Yeah.
So the brook runs behind the library into a closed culvert, runs under there, takes a left onto Cottage Street, out to Concord Ave, and daylights at the, and feeds the Clippet Pond.
Yeah.
So the pool itself is below the elevation at the bottom of the brook, which means it sits in groundwater all the time with groundwater pushing up on it.
Wow.
So it's very difficult to, when we pump the pool down, we have to keep pumping it because the groundwater keeps filling up the pool. When we fill up the pool higher than the groundwater level, as it is now, it keeps draining out into the ground. And actually, it goes into the filtering system, which is about 3/4 below grade, which is the building on the end opposite the bathhouse, that small structure you can see just sticking up a little bit. It actually, we have 3 sump pumps in there all the time that are pumping the water from mostly really groundwater in the pool back into the filtered system to maintain this cycle of trying to keep the pool fed, because the pool both, it's not watertight, so it both leaks water and,
So the bottom is not watertight, is that?
right, and water comes up in it depending on the height of the water in the pool.
So during the winter months, fall and winter months, when the pool is closed, the brook water fills the pool.
The water you see in the pool is the groundwater,
Do we
basically.
continue to pump that out? Oh, I mean, it
We do
eventually
not.
freezes, I suppose?
Yes, we do not.
Maybe it doesn't freeze. 'Cause
We do not, and then in the spring, we have to pump it all out and clean it all, of course, because it's dirty over the winter. Clean it all, and then fill it, and then as we fill it, we filter it to bring the water up to swimming standards. That takes a couple of weeks, and that's why you'll see that here later on, the health department comes over, checks everything, and then we open the pool.
Okay, okay, and that has, because where it currently sits, has an impact on the bottom, I mean, so continues to erode the bottom of the pool as well? Is that
Right,
part of it?
I think it's a great place for
You
a,
mentioned that to me before.
it's a great place for a swimming hole, but I don't think it's a great place for a concrete pool, in my opinion.
Thanks.
Let me see. Staff concerns mirror all the other concerns I've said. The filter house, the filtering system, the floor of the pool, as well as the vacuum and the skimming system. That is a photo, I probably have missed, and I apologize if I've missed some photos, because I was reading my memo here, but that is the filtering system inside that pool house, which is 3/4 below ground. What you see in the foreground there is actually the container that houses the filter itself. And the piping is the supply, most of it is the supply, and the suction for the filter, feeding the pool itself, the pool water. That's another picture of just the other side. Same thing, you can see the electrical wires, you can see the what they used to call Rube Goldberg there in the panel in the middle. Not very modern, to say the least.
Mhm.
This is the base of the pool. Every spring, we have some kind of base of this where the pool surface, this is that gunite surface, that thin layer of, gunite is really just a concrete that sticks to the pool. Where it comes off, the water pushes it off, and its age as well. What we do is we scrape all the loose parts off, and then we use hydraulic cement, fill it all in, let it dry, and then paint it again. and fill the pool and hope it lasts for the 2 months that the pool is open. You can see that's filled now with cement, getting ready for painting, hydraulic cement. That's just deterioration on the corner of the, just.
Peter, does that deterioration at the bottom of the pool happen during the summer months?
Yes, it does, and we have, the health department mainly gets complaints, but we do as well, as does the recreation department, about people that find the bottom uncomfortable, have had some minor cuts and scrapes from the bottom. So that's really become, unfortunately, standard. That's just showing some of the deterioration in the wall at the back of the platform, the diving board. That's some deterioration that's the railing on the handicapped access that was actually put in '95. All these things have since been repaired, of course.
Yeah.
These pictures, I should add, which I didn't mention, all these pictures were actually taken in 2007. All of these pictures weren't taken for this presentation. We had them in a file, and I just brought them out for the purpose of showing some photos.
Yeah.
Because by the time we scheduled this, the pool was filled.
Yeah, right, okay. But you had to do that same work this
We do
off-season,
do
right?
the same type
Okay.
of thing every year. Recent capital funding this year, we asked for some funding to replace the 2 electric motors which recirculate the water in the
Yep.
pool that I mentioned earlier, $11,000. We haven't done that yet, but we'll do that prior
Yeah,
to
on
next
capital budget, yeah.
season.
I have to admit, though, there was some considerable deliberation on whether, to fund.
Yes.
I mean, considering the sort of condition of the pool. But
The capital budget
clearly we
committee,
need- Yeah.
we spent a lot of time talking
Right.
about that at capital budget
Convincing
committee
you that
about
we need to do this right.
the need and the value of doing
Right,
that.
right, okay.
I'll mention, this is not on the screen, but financial, I've added for the Board of Selectmen some financial information, which is basically the expense and revenue for the pool in last year, in 2011, and the pool netted a positive almost $5,800.
Yep, I saw your analysis. Thank you.
Planning, again, not to belabor the point, the memo and the original point of this as it is today was to talk about the need to plan for the pool. I have a concern that someday, no doubt on a day like today, warm summer day, the pool, something's gonna fail in the pool, which is gonna force us to close the pool for the season. In order to avoid that, we really have to plan, and that was my request in 2007. I think it still stands, and I clearly recognize there's a long list of capital improvements for the town, but if we're gonna continue to have a pool, we have to do this sooner rather than later, I believe, because it's not gonna last. I don't know when it's gonna close. I think it's gonna close all the time, but the staff does a terrific job of patching this up every year, keeping it running, and they really do an amazing job, and they've kept it running all these years. But obviously, that's not gonna continue forever.
So Peter, I'm sure my colleagues have questions before we move to stuff. Thank you very much. It was a good presentation. Thanks for updating
Thank you.
it. And I agree, I think your staff does a terrific job of keeping that pool in the current condition that it's in. It's failing. We've talked about this before. We talked about it when I was on the warrant committee. I know the warrant committee's point of view is that, we need to consider some kind of a long-range plan here, and I agree as well. If we had the money to replace it, Peter, would we replace it here or replace it someplace else?
My view is that we would never replace it in the same place because of the groundwater issues. You'd replace it somewhere else or raise it significantly. But raising it significantly in the same place is difficult because of the surrounding elevation of the surrounding Concord Ave, Cottage Street. I don't think you'd want it on a platform. So I would move it up the hill, would be
Yeah.
my suggestion.
Okay.
But obviously, professional study needs to be done.
Right.
To see that,
Right.
again, it's my opinion that I don't think they would build the same structure.
Yeah.
I think they would build a modern pool, and I'm sure that would be the subject of much discussion and debate as to what is appropriate for the town and what the town would like to have.
Right.
But there are a lot of choices. I'm not sure they'd build this same
So
facility.
we have to think about what the cost is as well.
Of course, of course.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions for Peter?
No, I agree with what Mark said. I was on, as many of you know, served on Capital Projects Overview Committee, and the Underwood Pool has been a topic of discussion and planning and prioritizing in the town's capital array of projects for a long, long time. And we've heard the same thing, Peter, from you and others many times, which is any day now, we could lose the pool and shut it down. This diving board issue is just a minor indicator of what could happen. We have to deal with this, it's very important, but your report is clear and is absolutely based on fact.
And I think, I thank you, Andy, I agree. Right, yeah.
With all this inflow and outflow going on, how do you maintain the disinfectant level?
It's a challenge, frankly. It's a challenge. The water coming into the pool beneath the filter that we pump back into the filter is actually still chlorinated. That's how quickly it comes back. So they pump that back in. They constantly, at least 4 times a day, they check the chlorine level and maintain the water quality. We actually complete reports, turn them to the health department weekly, every day, 7 days a week. So it's an effort.
You test it 4 times a day?
Yes,
Oh,
7 days a week.
required.
Well, it's
Required to
it's
do that.
required.
There was
Right.
a requirement when we handed the pool over to the
okay.
department.
All right.
Right.
It's a state minimum.
And, we've chatted briefly, and we were walking the site the day that you and I met. You approached us and said the diving, you had concerns about the diving, and thinking about, alternative approaches here, whether we have the funding or not. We have CPA money, we have other money that may be coming forward through some sale of potential land in town, this is very premature, but I agree. I think we need to really consider this a priority for our community. I mean, we have a lot of other capital needs, clearly, without question, but it's a community asset, and we need to think about, what our plan is going to be. So I think at some point we have to deliberate on that as a board. Stefan, I'll turn it to you. So this was going to be the report and the end of it, but of course we have the issue as it relates to the diving platform.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Stefan Rusko, for those that don't know you, I'm the Director of the Health Department. To my right is Dr. Alper. You're right, I was going to basically just follow on Mark's and Peter's comments about the condition of the pool generally, but I thought that there's heard of raging elephants in the room. We all want to hear about the diving board.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I thought I would start with that. The Board of Health maintains regulatory authority under Mass General Codes 435-00. But each year, we struggle as to whether we can keep the pool open, whether we could even open it up, based on the filtration, the water quality, the bathhouse, the complaints that we get about the pool bottom as well. But when we do that inspection, that first inspection, we literally have to do it the day before or the day it opens, because we need to watch the water quality. We've got to see what's going on with the pool. We've got to look at the bathhouse. We can't do that too far ahead of time. So this year, on the day we did the inspection, our major concern was the pool water level. It looked lower than we had seen it before. And we had a concern, pardon my back, that the pool is shaped like this on the bottom rather than a flat surface. So we were concerned about the water dropping off on the
Concave.
side.
That's it emptied. Okay.
Yep, thank you.
See it.
You could see the slope. The diving tower, obviously,
I've never seen
is
that.
right there.
I've never seen that sort of.
Take a look at this one. That shows you the steepness of that slope. So that was our concern when we were losing water, going in and going out. Just if somebody does the wrong thing and dives off on this side, we had a concern. At the time of that inspection, I chatted with our inspector, I chatted with the pool folks, and fortuitously I saw yourself and
Yep.
Peter up on the hill. We had a discussion. I voiced my concerns that we are concerned about the safety of the swimmers. I chose to say there was no diving at that time. I inferred that with our board, and we then went back to do our due diligence and looked to see what we could do about it. So first thing I did is call Department of Public Health. They're hard to get a hold of, took a couple days. What they very specifically did said, it doesn't matter to them that the pool is 1912, 1930, 1940. I need to enforce the current day regulations. Current day is 1998, as far as DPH, I'm sorry.
That's our current regulations is 98?
That's the most current regulation on the pools. They're also talked about the diving area itself, which is the true area of concern. Up on the screen, you see a profile of what a pool should look like. Ours doesn't look like that, unfortunately. But with that said, there are some standards that we need to follow. But they're part of the state building code. They're not health code regulations. These are the design standards for the pools, which we need to focus on. Thank you, Glenn. That's a little bit better. That's the depth under the diving board. That's the depth at the deepest part. Could you go to the next chart? So what we need to worry about is the height of the diving
So,
board.
I'm sorry, if I could stop you
Sure.
for a moment. The last slide, was that what our pool looks like currently?
No.
Oh, that's, okay, I'm sorry. That's
That's what it
minimum
should-
water, that's, oh, I'm sorry, here it is.
These are the
In
only
this
things that
handout.
we could actually measure.
State
Depth
Board
under the
of Building
diving board.
Regulations and Standards, it's a figure 421.11, okay. thank
And
you.
then the deepest part of the pool. Next one, please. So we were concerned about several things the day of the inspection. The height of the pool board to the groundwater. Maximum height that we can have is 1 meter from the pool surface to the bottom of the board. Our pool diving board is around 32 inches, 33 inches on a good day. The water level drops, we've got a greater distance. So go back, please. So with a 1 meter board, underneath the board, you need 8.6 feet. You need essentially 10 feet of depth at the deepest part of the pool. If the board was a little higher, 7, 6, 9, and 9, and so something that's almost right on the deck, you need far less depth. But we're in this area.
Because the board as it currently sits is,
Roughly 32, 33 inches from the water. So it's a little short of a meter.
Okay.
But it basically gives you a minimum depth of between 9 feet and 10 feet.
okay, yep.
Next slide, please. So this is what we did. We have some good data. We know the height of the board from the best day for the groundwater we've had is essentially 32 inches. We know the top of the island has got a benchmark of 100 feet, and we knew that we had basically 1.5 feet from the top of the island to the pool surface. We did our math, and we came up with a depth of the pool about 8.48, almost 8.5 inches. That's the deepest part. It's not a 10-foot pool, it's not a 9-foot pool, it's not an 11-foot pool. The deepest part, it's not even 8.5 feet. Depth under the diving board, this is a little harder to measure just because of the measuring device we used. It's 8.75 inches. Barely meets the 8.6. So this is our concern. We're diving into a pool on the best possible day that doesn't meet the standards that we have to apply. And if the water level drops, if it drops 2 inches, you're now talking about a pool that's 8.2 inches. So those were our concerns. Part of our due diligence was to see if there's anything that we could do about it. Peter and I met several times. We met with the operational staff. I've talked with DPW several times, as well as DPH several times. There's really no recommendation that we could make with the current configuration of the board to allow diving. If the board is gone, if the board is lowered, there may be some discussion we could have, but as it stands now, we cannot make a recommendation that you should be diving into a pool that's not even 8.5 feet long, 8.5 feet deep.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So if I understand the point, if the diving board were on the platform, and does that change the?
Yes, sir.
How does that change it by? So you had 32 inches, is that what you had?
If,
No, you had less than
Yeah,
32.
if the diving board was at the platform, you would be able to dive as a minimum depth, probably around 8 feet and 6 inches. We don't even have that. At a good day right now, we have 8 feet 4 inches, 8 inches, 5 inches. If we lose 2 inches of water during the day, we're down.
Right, the closest one that we come to is the 22-inch height with what we have in depth.
The closest we come to is the 2 foot 6 inches, which is 30 inches.
Ralph, yeah.
I have a question for Peter Castanino.
Isn't it 9 feet?
You're right, 2.2.
2.2.
He's talking about the two,
You-
he's talking about this stuff. No, excuse me,
If you
sorry.
tried to put more water in the pool, would it
Right.
just leak more out?
There's some issues, we discussed that. We discussed obviously making the pool deeper,
Yeah.
lowering the diving board. The issue with, we've talked to staff about that, and the issue with adding more water to the pool is a couple. Number one is that you can't keep the pool too high because when it rains, it fills up the pool and it overflows. And so when it overflows, it goes out on the walk, it drags in all the debris from the sides, and there's no skimmer. So the pool has to be closed and the whole house to be clean. The second difficulty is trying to keep it higher consistently because of the amount, the more you put in, the faster it leaks, basically.
So what I'd like to do is ask Dr. Alper to speak a little bit as far as the historical perspective of where the health department has been involved with this,
Okay,
with this
that'd be
project.
helpful, yeah.
Which very briefly.
Thank you.
And the town is very fortunate because I'm the senior member at 25 years, my fellow members are 22 and 20. So we've all been living with this pool rather a long time.
Yep.
And as I said earlier, we actually handed over happily to Peter and his merry men because they were the ones that were working to maintain it. And they were the ones that knew what they were doing. And quite frankly, and you others have said it, the families of this town should be sending them flowers and chocolates every year to the fact that this pool gets open. Because I know that we, as a board, sat around the table every year really concerned that we were putting our signature to allow this pool to open. And this is going back 15, 20 years. The short answer is that our health director brought our board a piece of paper that said we had a piece of equipment that was in violation of state code and posed a safety hazard. We pulled the board. I mean, that's, in 2 sentences, that's what happened. Then we look to see what we can do to solve it.
Okay.
Because we're not going to take the chance. I don't care about 100 years, I don't care about last week. We're not going to take the chance, and we can't. So that was the short answer of where this came from. The truth is that as part of handing the pool over, we were very concerned about things like bacteria levels, which is why they do keep a diary of 4 times a day. Think of the man hours that are being put into that. Because it's not just dipping a test tube and looking at it and walking away. It's adding and subtracting and this and that. It's a lot of labor that goes to keep this pool open, happily. And I know that because people value this for the kids of this town. But the fact remains is that we have bacterial issues. We have never, however, had, in my 25 years, the issues that we have with maintaining the depth. And that's where this board came up this year. Because Stefan spoke about just dropping 2 inches, but it's dropping more than 2 inches. My son is 5'10" at 14. He jumps off that board into less than 8 feet of water, and he's going to hit his head or his foot. It's as simple as that, and that's assuming that he dives where he's supposed to, not into that sharp V on either side. So my board took the recommendations of our director who inspected it, as well as the discussions. We had a piece of equipment that was in violation. We had a safety hazard. We pulled the board, and now we were looking to see if, in fact, there's something that we can do. In the meantime, the pool is open.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alper. So before, I think the residents are anxious to speak, and I really want to hear from them. I think the board wants to hear from them as well. Is there, before we begin though, is there any alternative that would be safe?
Not with the depth. You're still going to have a less than 8.
Even if you don't put a diving board there and you jump off the concrete pit out?
You're jumping into less than 8 feet of water. I mean, you got a little kid, probably is okay. You're going to start monitoring height. You're going to start monitoring weight. You're relying on teenage lifeguards who do a great job on a regular basis, but they're still kids. They're going to feel peer pressure from kids. They're going to have kids scrambling all over. And like I said, you're going to have a scale and a yardstick there to see, sorry, you're too tall, you can't jump in.
Yep.
Or kids, no diving, just jumping. And how long is it going to take before the first kid decides to dive?
Okay. Yes.
Peter and I, as late of this morning, talked about mounting the pool almost flush to the deck if that's possible.
Mounting the board.
Right, flush to the deck, if that's possible. That's something that we need to think about. From an operational point, it's not for us, it's more on the
What would that do in
mechanical
terms of
side.
height? What would that do in terms of depth?
You would probably get,
What would you gain?
if you could do that, the minimum depth is 8.6, and that's right on the line,
Under perfect conditions.
under perfect conditions.
We're at one, yeah.
It would put it- it would-
we
it
need
would-
the architect and the, yeah.
No, it would put us into more or less the first category. It's less
It
than
says-
2'2".
Correct.
So it would be a depth required of 8 feet, and if we're talking 8.3 feet, or 8,
It would be 8.6.
at the
Deepest.
at the deepest.
Right.
D1 is 8.
It's 8 feet.
That's
right
directly
underneath
off
the
the
board.
edge of the board.
So
So if
The
they're
D2, if they
diving
dive
out,
out,
which is where the force of hitting the water is concerned. But again, 8.6 is our dream.
Right.
and we're not
It's
at
not
8,
our
we're not at
reality.
8.6.
No, we're at 8.4 or 9.
On a good day.
On a good day,
And that's ideal conditions.
you know.
And filling it more doesn't make sense.
And it changes during the day. It's not even a matter of taking your yardstick first thing in the morning.
Changes during the day.
I will also say that in filling the pool more, one of the problems is the pool is not level, so it actually overflows on the Concord Ave side first. It's not perfectly level as the water
What,
is.
the rim of the pool is not
What?
level?
Say that again, Peter? I'm sorry.
When you fill the pool, the water surface is basically level.
Yeah.
It actually overflows on the Concord Ave side first.
Really?
So it doesn't fill
It's like
evenly.
this?
Yeah, it doesn't
So
fill
it
evenly.
grades towards
so
Concord
it's
Ave.
that's an issue as well.
Okay. I think there's some folks here that have questions or want to express concerns or points of view. If you gentlemen might stay in here and answer them. I'll recognize anyone that wants to be recognized to come to the mic and express their point of view on the matter. Anyone? Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, please. Carl. Carl, could you state your name, please? Lisa's taking minutes here, so.
Thank you for having us here tonight.
Oh, you're
It's,
welcome, Carl.
My name is Carl Ivester. I'm a lifelong resident of Belmont. I live
Yeah.
over on Stearns Road. And, instead of getting into, as Dr. Alper said, the 100 years of history, I'd like to get into some of the facts. The statement that was provided was, the law states that, and I'm not an attorney, but I believe it states that as of 1988, anything previous to 1988 is grandfathered. Is that the case?
Not when it comes to state safety code.
So you're saying that the Mass State Code that I have is not correct?
The most recent, I think he has the most recent one of 98, is that correct?
1998.
Right,
I have it. I
anything
have it.
Before that, doesn't matter.
If you were
because
building-
the
if you-
state- Because the state has changed their codes. And for something that gets re-inspected every year,
What was the
It
water
needs-
level today?
I have no idea.
You check it 4 times a day. I would like to know what it was.
No,
What was
sir.
it yesterday?
Sir.
What was it the day before?
Carl, hang on for a moment, please.
Okay. We do not check the depth of the pool 4 times a day. We check the quality of the water 4 times a day, looking for bacteria levels, which would be another reason to close the pool if the bacteria levels were too high.
Let me ask Peter. Peter, how often do we check the depth?
When they check they don't measure it, they visually check it to make sure
There's no
it's
lines on the
about,
side.
there's no
There's no-
lines.
no
It's
depth
where
lines.
it usually is, more or less.
When do we do a
But it
formal check?
changes.
Do we do a formal check at all?
I have one of our supervisors from Parks here, Frank, can speak
Frank,
to
how are you?
that. Frank, this is Frank Sartori, one of our
Hi, Frank,
Parks
how are you?
supervisors.
Yeah, you're welcome.
morning, 7 a.m., do a visual check.
Do a visual check?
And how was it today? Was it pretty good today? So this week, we could have the diving board all week?
Well, perfect.
Of course not.
It's perfect.
It hadn't rained all really much. I was just thinking it might be.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead.
No, I want you to speak. So perfect means what? What's the depth of
I
perfect?
just, from what I've understood, that 1988 was the last state changed provision to
Right.
that code. Okay, the code is what allows you to do your job, correct? If you don't know your code and you're stating something right now that isn't true, if the code states that anything previous to 1988 is grandfathered, and anything that's being built after 1988 has to be follow this code, is that the case? I'm asking.
No.
So that's it.
There's no
You'll state your
grandfathering.
reputation on that.
There's no grandfathering when it comes to safety regulations.
You'll state your reputation that the code that I have is different than the code that you have.
I'm not stating my reputation on what you have in your possession, Mr. Ivester. I'm simply telling you that we ourselves cannot have the body of information that is needed for all measurements and levels and the likes, not just of pools, but of everything that the state oversees. So we count on the state to come up with safety guidelines. We base our opinions on these guidelines, assuming that the state has done their due diligence. The state changes them as the years go by. So you can't necessarily be grandfathered into a situation that is now deemed dangerous, even though it wasn't deemed dangerous 50 years ago. Things change.
When did it change?
1998 is the last time that they changed these regulations.
1988 was, I believe. And in 1988, it
That's-
states, it's clear that it states that anything built after 1988 has to follow these guidelines. Anything previous to 1988 does not have to be changed. So what you've done is you've come in and taken a pool that's been a part of this community for 100 years without a single incident, as far as we know, as far as anybody can document, and you've taken it away. You don't know the water levels, but you check the pH 4 times a day. I've heard about how awful the condition is. I've heard about how terrible everything is over there. I'm only here for the diving board. The diving board has never caused an injury since we've been there. How often have you, can I ask you when the last time you folks used the pool?
When my kids were young.
So you don't use the pool, this isn't really, this is a burden for
Not
you.
recent.
I've heard about how much work it is and how hard you work and how much work you have to do to keep that pool open, yet none of you use it. But everyone here uses this pool, and we just want what's ours back, not because it's difficult for you. Follow the code, get the diving board back, that's all I'm asking. Yes, sir.
Knowing,
I recognize you, not.
I'm sorry.
Not Carl, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Stefan, please.
Your comment about grandfathering is a very good one.
Hmm?
When I did our due diligence, which is the term that we use,
I'm familiar with it, thank you.
I checked specifically about which version of the code we're required to inspect that pool on. Pool code,
I have been asking you for that code for a week. Why do you have it today, but you couldn't deliver it to me for a whole week? 7 days, you couldn't deliver that code to me. And I've asked and asked and asked and asked and asked.
Carl?
Yeah.
Ms. Alvesta, please, could you finish, please?
I don't think you asked me for the code at all, but that's not an argument we need to have
I'll
here.
forward the email to the paper.
It's a public document. It's on the web. You get it from DPH. It's a 1998 code. When we checked with DPH, they said, that's the code we inspect by. End of issue. I don't get a choice with any other code. Can't make it any different.
Well, that's really all I have to say. I disagree with what the board has done, and I hope you reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. Alvesta. Yes, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Masucci.
Hi, Sarah, how are you?
I am the parent of an almost 9-year-old boy who will take a flying leap into any body of water anywhere if you let him. And I am very grateful that people are paying attention to the depth of the pool and the safety of the diving. My child is short and tiny, so he'd be fine, but I still think it's appropriate that we do this. I think the thing that frustrates me, and I think probably frustrates many people, was the suddenness of it, which I know you've explained, and I'm not complaining about that, but I feel like that's more of the issue that people have, is that they weren't given time to, as a community, share their concerns and maybe brainstorm about solutions to that. But I just wanted to state that, 30 years ago, there were different regulations about a lot of things, and keeping the members of the community who use the pool safe seems perfectly reasonable.
Thank you, Sarah. To that point, I think Dr. Alper, you and I spoke in terms of communication, and certainly we can always improve on matters.
Well, this is it. I mean, as Stefan stated, the last inspection to open up has to be within 24 hours of opening up. I think everybody sees that because this is an unsteady entity. So the inspection of this had to occur at this point. Peter and his men also have to have time to finish. We then had to be contacted. The Board of Health needed to be to phone in on this also. Unfortunately, in retrospect, maybe there would have been other ways that we could have communicated through. As you know, the town employees are not allowed to use the social entities, Facebook, etc. We certainly could have posted something on the town website as we have subsequent to it, but it took a couple days for it to get there. It is a learning curve and to some extent on communication. And I understand the frustration of walking up to the pool and the kids licking their chops, ready to jump off the board, and there ain't no board. I mean, we really do. I guess we took pride in the fact we got the pool open, thank God, another year with the pool.
Right.
But, part of it is just by design. We didn't know until less than 24 hours the board wasn't going to be able to be used. We got it out as soon as we could, and we need to do maybe a better job of doing what sooner is.
Okay. I thank you for that, Dr. Alper. I guess, the entire town, we work constantly on how to open up the lines of communication, and I know this board is committed to that as well, and we can always improve upon that. But to that point, I had gotten some emails and some concerns from residents that you went ahead and, purchased your passes already for the pool, and it clearly states the policy is non-refundable, and I had correspondence with Kelly today, who's talked to June, and I think we've let the the Recreation Commission know as well. We can make exceptions on that, so I'm stating publicly to the extent that if we can't have a diving board there, and we certainly can, I know you're going to continue to look at this matter, and that's the only reason you bought passes, or you're frustrated by the fact that you can't use the diving board, you can certainly go to the Recreation Department and get a refund. And what I would ask all of you, to the extent possible, if you reach that conclusion over the next, we'd appreciate if you could reach that, point of view over the next 2 to 3 weeks, but we will make an exception in this case to anyone that wants to get a refund they can. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Lisa Serini. I've been using the pool all my life. In fact, Lorraine Benoit taught me how to swim.
Congratulations.
I get the feeling that the problem is we're losing water. My question is there any kind of quick fix that we could do to stop it, maybe redo the base of the pool, study it instead of making a big, ripping the whole thing down, moving it? Is there any way, if we do something to stop losing the water, how many years would we get out of that? And if we could get the diving board back by keeping that water level where it's supposed to be? Second question is, we have the CPA tax now, and how much could we generate from that? If that would be enough just to do that project and solve that problem for now, to stop losing the water.
Is that, you had to, I'll let Peter speak for the first. Is that the question? I'll speak on the CPA. The CPA funds, you're right, I forget what the balance will be by spring. Certainly, what we're learning, and I think the legislation is being more relaxed, because I sat on the CPA committee, and under the old law, you could only use CPA funds for a new recreation facility, and now I think the governor has proposed legislation, not yet passed, in which you could use CPA funds to renovate, rehabilitate a recreational facility. Keep in mind that this board of selectmen, even though we have one member of the board that sits on the CPA committee, we have no authority whatsoever over that, spending of that money. The CPA committee would make recommendations to town meeting. Town meeting at that point would have to agree to use whatever amount of money would be required to replace the pool or rehabilitate it. So I agree that it could be a source of funds. I think there are other sources of funds that the board hopefully will be able to consider. On Woodfall Road, there's been renewed interest in Woodfall Road and other areas of town, but certainly I think we'll be looking to all sources of funds. But I just wanted to clarify in the CPA, it's not, this board would not have any authority whatsoever. We could recommend to the CPA committee through our representative, Andy Rojas, but then that CPA committee would then make recommendations. I think they intend to sometime next spring.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at a cheap way of doing this.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not certain there is a cheap way, but me and Peter can answer the more technical question.
Several years ago, we looked at replacing the gunite, the surface of the pool. This is going back almost 10 years, probably, and they said that a couple of companies came out, they said about $175,000 to resurface it, but they wouldn't guarantee it. They would provide no guarantee because the structure underneath is not stable, and so they couldn't guarantee the gunite. And I don't think the gunite would stop the leaking without the concrete underneath being stabilized. But I will tell you also, this has never been professionally evaluated. I'm not a pool expert, but it has never been evaluated. But my sense and my experience in engineering tells me there's not an easy fix. Unfortunately.
And Peter, I have just a question on that, is even if you did that, it doesn't solve the code violations in depth, because if the water level in Stefan's diagram is correct, that's at the 100.0 mark, at its best day. That 8'6" is unattainable even if you resurface in a leak-proof condition.
Well, what we could do is dig deeper, maybe, and then resurface.
Well, that's what he's saying. You would have to redo the entire bottom of the pool.
Right, but that's
taking out the
cheaper than
concrete.
doing the whole, moving it and.
But you'd be lowering the pool more deeply into the groundwater, which creates a worse problem. Plus, you have to remember, how much money does the town want to spend on this pool, given all the things that I've talked about tonight? The bathhouse, the filter system, all the other issues. It gets to be, in my view, there's a bigger picture about how much the town should invest in that, but that's the town's decision, certainly. But that's my view.
Because it's the oldest pool in the country, do we have to keep it as a pool? I mean, there's no way we could lose the pool if it's the oldest pool in the country. Could we get help from some kind of historic planning or something in that respect?
I'm not sure. I'm
I'm
sorry.
not sure, I don't follow the question. You mean
Well-
Other funding sources?
Right.
Because of the historic nature.
Oh,
I think the point is, and I understand it's the oldest, I think it was the first public pool in the country, and there's some historical aspect to that. I think from my point of view, we very much want a pool. I very much want a pool. My sense is, in feeling that, why would I invest all of this money in its current location? I'd rather take whatever money we could pull together through private donations, through public funds, and re-site it on that same location. Call it the Underwood Pool, even design it to some extent similarly to that. That's my point of view. I know there's historical aspects to this pool, and I'm sure there are folks in this community that would reject that notion, maybe even the Historic District Commission. I'm committed to trying to see if we can't replace it, and replacing it where it currently sits. And that's the reason that fortuitously, Peter and I were walking that site because as part of, we were walking that site because we're also on a working group to look at replacement of the field that, if the new library is approved, would take up. If the library's sited across the street, we're going to lose a playing field, likely a soccer field. And so we've been deliberating, debating, because it's such a dearth of fields, and the schools really can't afford to lose a field, and we're committed for that not happening. And we were looking at the incinerator site, and there's some issues there that we need to work through. Peter came up with a nice idea, a wonderful idea, hasn't been fully vetted, as to we could put a soccer field there where it currently sits, where the pool currently sits, and move the pool further up on that location. There's a lot of work and diligence that we need to perform.
on where the playground is.
A lot of constituents that we need to talk to, clearly the residents. I think it happens to be a wonderful idea that hasn't been fully vetted, but he's at least sketched it out, and we presented it to this working group, and all of them were enthusiastic about the possibility, but we have the historic nature of this pool and whether that's a consideration, and that notion would be rejected. So I think it's a plan that could work, and I think it's a plan that could work from a short-term perspective, like within the next year or two.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Peter, question. I saw somewhere in your reports that it looked as if it was cheaper to reconstruct the pool, make a whole new pool than it was to repair it. Is that?
That was the bathhouse.
Bathhouse,
I think you think it was the Edwards and Kelsey was the bathhouse, just the bathhouse itself. They didn't look at the pool, only the building itself, Rob.
What would you think about the comparative cost of, well, repair is very difficult.
Repair
with
is,
the current location.
yeah, I'm not sure if it would be possible to repair it. I think it's kind of like, I think it's much akin to a house falling down. You have to look at repairing it to the cost of replacing it, and how much value each one brings to the table for the money you spend.
And Mr. Chairman, I also did get by phone the chair of the Historic District Commission while he was sitting in Newark Airport
Oh,
this
okay.
evening, and he said
Perfect location to
that
discuss
there
it.
was not, they hadn't taken any position on this yet, but they would like to be involved. in
Absolutely, we
planning.
need to discuss
That's
it
all.
with them, without question. How are you? Nice to see you again.
See you too. PJ Looney, School Street. I have 3 questions.
Yes.
The first are relative to the pool, the third is a suggestion. I guess it's not a question, so Dr. Alper, I guess you would know this one. Does the state discriminate between diving and jumping?
I don't think that they care what you do. I think it's the volume of water you're doing it into.
Okay, so if they-
It's not, no, it's a very fair question.
Yeah, I think it is a fair
You
question,
know,
yeah.
because there's diving and there's jumping.
I mean, jumping, not diving, but jumping.
Feet first.
Feet first, PJ?
But our codes don't speak of the activity, they speak of the body of water and the distance the board is from.
Is that
think
something
just-
that we should, just, can we go back and check on, I mean, just get your opinion on that, or you're certain?
I didn't see
from the point
any
of view?
mention in the code.
Yeah,
I mean, the
okay.
code- you have the code right in front of you.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
Well, obviously
Yeah.
not.
I'm not suggesting that you haven't read
But
it, or.
it's,
It's a question we could ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And I guess, PJ, then it becomes an issue of policing that.
Not a problem. If you've seen the lifeguards down
Okay, good, well, okay.
there, it scared me. so.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We'll ask about that.
I mean,
I think it's a fair
No,
question.
it's a very
It's a very fair question,
And
yes.
they are
Second.
called diving boards, so that may.
Well, there's.
Yeah.
Second question, I'm assuming there's not enough room on the base of the landing to put a slide? Or does that once again,
The,
That would, of course, if you had a slide, guarantee that you'll be jumping rather than diving.
No.
Unless they went head first. I guess they could go head first, yeah.
Yeah, but you could
same thing?
put that pretty down
Projection?
close to the water.
Put it close to the water level.
And they're going out like this rather than
Oh,
down.
that's interesting.
the restrictions on slides are even more stringent than they are on diving boards.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Because there's more injuries from slides and diving boards.
And there are much,
Reported injuries. So it actually, did you speak to him about that, or, I mean, we know that we saw that there was a much more stringent guidelines on it because there was much more history of injury from slides.
those are much more modern regulations. That's an addendum.
Can we look at that at least? I mean, sure, we'll look at it.
All right, the third is more of a thought, but as Carlos said and other people here, the whole concept of the board at the Underwood was a rite of passage for kids to move from the shallow end to the deep end,
To use the board.
right? That's gone, right? If I can do math, and I can do math, it sounds like that's gone. We're not digging a hole, probably cost a gazillion dollars. There has to be something else we can add to the pool that makes that a viable, important thing in kids' lives. So
I like that
I'm
idea.
putting that onus
I like
on you
that
guys,
idea a lot,
'cause
PJ. No.
I don't know. So.
Okay, thank you very much, PJ. Thank you very much.
This is where we're all at, just trying to give the kids what we feel they should have.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Matt Russo,
Hey, Matt.
lifelong resident of Belmont. Thanks for your time.
Welcome.
So I kind of got hit with a double whammy this year. My daughter goes to Butler, so we went without a playground
Yeah, I
this
guess
year.
so, huh?
Get a
That's
membership to
been
the
taken care
park.
of. Yeah, right.
No diving pool, increased
Yeah.
fees, fair enough. Health concerns are understood. It seems like a lot of these issues have been foretold. And, you know, we have certain memories of growing up in Belmont that we like to see our children relive and, or just have a great childhood. And it seems like a lot of these issues are known ahead of time. And I understand there are a lot of, you know, items to be addressed in the course of, you know, budgeting, but I implore you to consider our children and their well-being ahead of time instead of reactionary actions such as closing a park last minute in a pool, because it affects our children, and that's, I think, why we choose to live here. So I implore you to act
Absolutely,
proactively
do that. And
for our
I think
children.
I think frankly, you know, we have from a safety perspective, but I understand your point of view. Unfortunately, we're able to work through in town meeting, as you might know, you probably do know.
Sure, I
About the
understand,
playground
you know.
issue. But you're right, and
But I guess, you know, and some of this I don't understand. Some of the math does seem a little bit fuzzy to me. We are below 36, we are close to 8 inches. That's one thing, but it seems to me also we're out of compliance for 14 years, and all of a sudden it's an issue, so, just kind of
no, I understand.
another point
Yeah.
of question. But
Yeah,
thanks for your time.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, thank you.
I'd like to take a moment just to advertise Partners in Play. Ellen Schreiber's in the back. Ellen has been really taking a lot of responsibility for helping to fix the Butler Playground. We'll be helping to fix. Yeah. And I think with her leadership from the community, I think we as a board have to respond by getting more proactive on this pool, on the parks, on the playgrounds.
Right.
And really taking a much larger responsibility. So I want to thank Ellen for her efforts. And I think it's a good message to us to get started and get going.
Absolutely, yeah, and Ellen and I have chatted already a couple of times on the pool issue. Ellen,
Hi, Ellen Schreiber.
Hi.
Thanks for the PSA. I guess I had a couple of things. I don't want to repeat stuff that's already been said, but there are a couple of things I wanted to add. The first was if this can be a catalyst to try and make something happen about the pool. It was a huge surprise to me several years ago when I had a very small child that the pool was at risk. And, you know, I've been watching it all along, and we haven't done anything yet, right? So we've known about the problem, we've known about the problems. We haven't known about the depth issues, but we know the pool has problems. So if this could be a catalyst, then maybe we can all benefit. There's a couple of things I would like to beseech you to look for any kind of a workaround. My child would love to jump off the platform if that's a possibility. You know, if there's any sort of a workaround, that's awesome. If not, you know, we live with it, but maybe we can work quickly to address it. I just wanted to point out that without a diving board, there is a whole population to whom the pool is not interesting. So that doesn't just impact the community, that also impacts our budget. You were talking earlier, Peter, I think in your presentation you had that we were netting at the pool about $5,800 or something like that last year. It can't be that this year if there's a lot of people who are going to choose not to join the pool because it's less interesting. The main thing I wanted to mention, though, is regarding communications, and that is, so with the pool, the rec department knows who bought passes to the pool. The rec department has a communication channel directly to us. They send us emails about closings. They send us emails about all kinds of things that are going on. So I'd like to encourage the board to look at the rec department's email list as a communication channel. That's something that could have been used when the diving board was taken off, and then I wouldn't have shown up on Thursday and had a very unhappy child. He would have been unhappy. I could have prepared him. But I think, you know, there's a tendency to work in silos. So the rec department has a communication channel, but the Department of Health may not. But we're all one lovely town. So if we could think about these communication channels and how to reach people and let them know things that are important to them.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'll applaud that, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Point is very well taken.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Larry Corcoran, lifelong resident of Belmont.
Hi, Larry.
My father was a lifelong servant of Belmont, police officer.
Absolutely.
My question was, I heard in the presentation that there's been several injuries of cut feet and stuff. So how's this pool open if there's cut feet, but in the entire 100 years there's never been a diving board injury? I am being serious.
No, and you know what? It's
If
on the
that's
surface,
a problem,
on the surface,
cut
it's a
feet
very
could
fair
be-
question.
And
Well,
you mentioned bacteria, that would be a major issue for
Well,
health, in my opinion, but yet the pool's open.
well, because Peter and his men maintain a healthy bacterial level. There
Right,
have
that
been-
still doesn't,
there
that still
have been
doesn't excuse the cut
instances-
feet.
Well, there have been instances over the years where we did close the pool for a day. You had is shocking the right term, Peter? Yes.
Yeah, you
Because
had- we had a pool in our
bacterial
backyard,
level.
you had a shock
So,
every once in a while.
you know, when we reach unhealthy levels, I mean, there have been instances of people getting scraped, of cut feet occasionally. I think that you try to weigh, as we did with the diving board, the overall benefit versus
The risk.
the risk.
Right, but
Well,
again,
there's
I
a-
see several
well-
risks of cut feet in the history of it,
Okay?
and not one diving board injury, and an estimated 5 million dives is what experts
Okay.
have estimated.
And the
on that history.
consequences of a diving injury are much greater than they are of a cut foot.
Right,
And that's
but
something
again,
that.
and I'm not going based on the history of the pool and trying to
Okay.
grandfather, I'm going on the basis of the history of statistics. We're all about throwing numbers up here. Statistically, you have a better chance of losing your foot in a cut from an infection, from what I'm listening to, than hurting yourself on that diving board, just based on the numbers.
Until it's your child that's a quadriplegic, because he hit the bottom of that pool head first.
Again, it's never happened.
No, it has not happened.
We have this bad
But-
habit
but
lately
that's
of taking
irrelevant.
stuff away from people.
That's,
in the
no, we did not
hope
take
that
it
nothing
away
happens.
until we crossed the safety level.
The
When
safety
we
level,
have-
again, according to what Matt said, to piggyback off that, that was 14 years. 14 years, nothing was done.
That's right.
Sorry?
Thank you, Lou.
If you, well, I'm going by what they said, 1998 as well. But that's my point. My point is we're going, I think, well above and beyond the need to protect it. Has the state come out and inspected it?
The state has been there before.
Did they say, pull the diving board?
I can't comment on what they may have done 15 years ago. The state
So
has
you
been,
mean the state inspections haven't been done in 14 years?
they're not required to be done, that's why the
I
locals
heard
enforce it.
back, well, I heard that was one of the big scandals down in the pool where the girl died and was in there for 2 days because the state inspectors went down there and couldn't find her because it was too cloudy, they didn't know she was there. I thought the state also had to come inspect these
No,
pools
they
as
don't.
well.
No,
The state does
the
not.
local health department does.
The
that.
state does on occasion visit, They've been to several pools in Belmont. They do that on their schedule, not ours. I've chatted with the state. The pool expert is a gentleman that does come out routinely. He will probably make a visit to Belmont this summer.
Okay, so who would that person be so we can contact him?
Peter Wheeler,
Peter Wheeler of the State
Department of
and
Public
State Health Department?
If you send me an email, I'll give you his contact information.
Okay, great, because I've had some other people send you emails that haven't been getting replies from.
I've responded to every email. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Stefan. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we'd have, we're going to continue to look at this matter. For now, there's no doubt you would. We're going to look at the jumping. PJ brought some good points up, jumping versus diving. And is there anything else you want to look at?
Possibility of going off that ledge rather than off the board.
Yeah, going off the ledge rather than the board. Okay,
Yeah.
right. So we have a meeting in 2 weeks, the 16th. Could we, is that enough time to,
Update.
I mean, I would imagine that the Board of Health, and this is under your.
We're actually
safety
meeting,
issue.
my board is meeting on the 18th. We have the same restriction you three do because, of course, we can't discuss this outside of the meeting because
Right.
it's the open law. But Stefan communicates.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
all
I'm
right,
sure
so you'll
Kelly
be
does.
contacting the Board,
Correct.
the Board of Health as well as the Board of Selectmen. Okay, great. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Folks to leave. Is Ellen, did she come? Does this have to be signed tonight?
Ellen O'Brien.
Is there a deadline issue on this, Kelly?